It is 4 a.m. It's been a long day. I need a haircut. I'm tired. That's okay, because I am here to share my new YouTube channel with y'all. So, on this YouTube channel, I'm hoping to go into stuff that's a little more abstract and a little different than what you see on the majority of Nerf channels. So, we're going to start with a video series that I call Good Design, Bad Design. What we're going to do here is look at a blaster with some engineering issue, and then look at another blaster that solves that problem, and then discuss how we could potentially do better with it. So let's start with the Diatron. I love the Diatron. It's beautiful, it's fairly unique, it's fun to use, and I know some people have problems with it, with like the priming and all that stuff, and they're entitled to their incorrect opinion. That's fine, but it's wonderful for the most part. The problem is that it can't dry fire, and that in itself is not a problem. I understand why it can't dry fire. It's not using a plunger system, it's a direct springer. The torsion spring cranks back a little arm, and then the arm strikes the discs, sends them flying out. If the kinetic energy of the arm is not transferred into the discs, if there are no discs there, then it just slams into the inside of the blaster. It's a lot more damaging than dry firing a springer. So by necessity, it has a dry fire lock. Now, you could just remove the dry fire lock and say, okay, well, be careful. But my approach to Nerf is that it should always be accessible to non-hobbyists. I let kids use my blasters. I let my friends use my blasters who don't exactly know what they're doing, and it's important that they have fun. It's important that they not feel bad because they broke somebody's toy, and then they don't want to come back and Nerf again because they feel terrible. So these need to be abuse proof, in my opinion, or at least for the way that I do things. So dry fire lock stays in. Now, you have to look at the root of the problem. The problem is not that the blaster can't dry fire. The real problem is that you can prime it without discs available. So right now, no discs in the blaster, but it'll prime, it just won't fire. And once you're at this point, you can't deprime it. You can't do anything except get a couple of discs, load them in, and then fire the blaster. And what if you don't have a couple of discs? Sometimes in the middle of an HVZ game or whatever their situation, you just might not have discs on hand. And then your torsion spring, which is a lot harder to find replacements for than a compression spring, just stays compressed, and you just kind of ruin that over time, and that's not good. So luckily, the Vigilon solves this problem in a very simple and very practical way. No disc in there, can't prime. If it can't fire without a disc, then it can't prime without a disc. I mean, it's really that easy. And for whatever reason, as far as I know, this is the only vortex blaster that actually has a disc detector that's tied to a priming lock. The others, the ones that are mag-fed, they will not let you fire without a disc present, but they will let you prime without a disc. Like, you just put the mag in empty, it'll still let you prime. And I'm wondering, wait, why didn't they just put a like a disc detector lock on the prime as well? That would have solved that problem. I don't know, but the Vigilon gets it right. This might not be a hobbyist's ideal solution because it adds a lock, and I know that a lot of Nerfers are just allergic to locks of any kind, but for casual play, this is actually ideal. It just lets you know, hey, either you've got a messed up disc that you need to check out, which I know is a pain in itself, or you just are out of discs, and either way, that prevents the issue. It also means that it's a lot less common to find Vigilons, thrifting and so on, that are left primed. Whereas you find tons of Diatrons that are left primed because the first thing a kid does when he grabs it, you just kind of like crank and then just leaves it there. Because, he didn't know any better. It's a kid. So this is just a better all-around solution. Now, there is an ideal solution that I think would work for both hobbyists as well as casual players. And for that, let's take a look at our pretty but utterly useless Longarm. Okay, so the Longarm can dry fire. But if you didn't have an air restrictor in, that would cause a problem, of course. So let's say that, in theory, this thing had a dry fire lock, right? So it can't dry fire. But it can do something else. From back here, even without the slide in the fully forward position, you can still fire it. So normally you want the slide in the forward position before you fire, because this little slide here, it is not supposed to move forward with the force of the spring. That's not good for it, because then it does this. That's just ugly. We don't want it to do that. If you keep doing that over and over, you're going to crack the plastic or misalign something, because that's a lot of mass moving forward. So normally you want this in the fully forward position. However, what if you want to deprime it? You want it back here if you want to deprime it, right? But then, you create that issue of, okay, how do you allow it to safely deprime but not allow it to slam forward? Well, what if you had a button? Normally, let's say you've got a trigger lock so that the blaster will not actually be able to pull the trigger unless it's in its forward position. Unless you're back here or wherever and you push that button. And when you push the button, it lets you know that, okay, your hand's on the slide, so when you release the trigger, your hand will absorb the force of the spring. So that, I think, is an ideal solution. It allows the kids to play safely without worrying about damaging anything, but you can still take out the air restrictor without worrying about it dry firing or whatever else. You can put in those locks, and your finger being on here means that it will always have to have a hand on it in order to dry fire. So there you go. I know it seems a bit complicated. Maybe I'll flesh it out a little more in one of my videos when I do some modifications or build my own blasters. But for now, that's good design, bad design. Before we go, let me show you my setup. Speaking of bad design. So this is what I'm using as my camera mount. Check this out. This is an app gear. It's a little blaster thingy that was designed for like this ancient Android app. And it's got this smartphone mount on it. And so I just adjust it to the height I need for my LG. And I just set it up here, literally just stand it upside down. And the weight of my gigantic phone helps to counterbalance it, and it just stays perfectly balanced up there. And that's how I film. And that should tell you everything you need to know about my level of cinematic professionalism. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed, and I hope to see you in future videos.